Hey FBC, my name's Ash. Josh contacted me earlier this week to share with you guys a story that I put together about an experience that I had in college. I did write it all down, and it is kind of a story, and I had to kind of make up a few things and kind of fill in some gaps that I didn't really know, because not all of the story happened directly to me, but I hope that it resonates, and I hope it kind of hits home for some of you guys. So here it is. Our story opens with Pam in the bathroom of her dorm room, staring into her mirror, sobbing. No one is around to hear her. She doesn't even have a roommate. She lives alone in the handicap suite of her dorm. See, Pam was born with cerebral palsy. It's not so severe as some others she'd met at a camp she used to go to as a kid, but it caused her to walk with a very pronounced limp, kind of crooked even. Also, her speech was slightly slurred, and she often stuttered and had to repeat herself. It was the second semester of her freshman year at college, and because of the way she walked, and because she was self-conscious about her speech, Pam kept to herself most of the time. She walked to and from class constantly feeling like everyone was staring at her. So she kept her head down and got from place to place as quickly as her crippled legs allowed her to. She'd gone all the way through first semester without making one good friend. There were acquaintances in some of her classes. Her lab partner in science was friendly enough, but she never saw her outside of class. The reason for Pam's tears that night was that she felt completely invisible. As she stared into the mirror, Pam reflected on her day. Her mind rushed back to the cafeteria at lunchtime. Normally, Pam would get her food to go and struggle to carry it back to her dorm room where she could eat alone. Today, however, she had to stay late in her last class and wouldn't have enough time to get to lunch and go back to her dorm before her next class. The cafeteria seemed to buzz around her with life and joy and conversation. She got her food and awkwardly made her way to a small table in the corner. She quickly ate her lunch with her head down, all the while secretly longing for human contact of any kind. Suddenly, there was a very energetic group of students, 2 guys and 3 girls, making their way from table to table in the dining hall, handing out some kind of paper. As they got close to her table in the corner, Pam was anxious but excited to interact with these students who were obviously very outgoing and well-liked. What should she say? What would they say to her? What was the paper they were giving everyone? In what seemed like the blink of an eye, before Pam could even think of something to say, they were just there, at the table next to hers. She could just make out the tail end of the conversation. "Yeah, it's always a blast. You guys should try and make it out tonight." Pam's heart skipped a beat with excitement, and her palms were suddenly drenched with sweat. But then her heart dropped as the group skipped right by her and went straight to the next table. One of the girls must have noticed Pam in that moment because without a word and without even making eye contact, as an afterthought, she slowed down just enough to drop one of the flyers on Pam's table, then hurried to catch up with the rest of her friends. Pam brushed away the tear that involuntarily dropped down her cheek. She was heartbroken. All she had hoped for was one moment of human interaction, but instead she got this stupid flyer. She picked up the flyer and through her unfallen tears read, "Come join us for Bible study in the Student Center at 8. Back in her dorm bathroom that night, Pam's tear-stained face stared into the bathroom mirror. "Why am I invisible?" she wondered aloud. "Why won't anyone notice me?" She picked up the razor blade off the sink and touched it to the flesh of her arm. Her mind suddenly transported her to another interaction earlier that evening. Earlier in the dining hall, she had nearly ripped the flyer up into 1,000 pieces out of frustration and anger, but didn't want to call attention to herself. "Those stupid Christians don't even notice me," she thought to herself. "There's a million things I'd rather do than go to their dumb Bible study." But she changed her mind. It was 7:55, and she was in her dorm room, alone, watching TV as usual. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the brightly colored flyer on her dresser beside her wallet. She said out loud, "I can't stand it. I can't stand another night of being alone." She decided that she would indeed go to their dumb Bible study. As she slipped into the student center, there was a guy up front, one of the guys from the cafeteria, playing his guitar, and everyone was singing a song that Pam vaguely recognized. She slipped back into the back row and sat taking it all in. She noticed the girls from the group in the cafeteria sitting together, smiling and clapping along with the music. Her heart longed to be right there, in the middle of them, smiling and laughing and clapping too. After the guy with the guitar finished his third song, they all sat, and somebody came up front and talked about the Bible, something about 1 Corinthians 13. It was a familiar passage that Pam had heard once at a wedding. She listened intently and wondered why no one ever seemed to love her like that. After 15 minutes or so, the guy wrapped up and somebody came up and prayed that they would all learn to love each other more. Then they dismissed. As they dismissed, everyone stayed around and chatted and laughed and grouped up. Pam sat and watched for what seemed like an hour, but was actually more like 5 minutes. But still no one even so much as looked at Pam sitting alone in the corner of the room. In her mind's eye, Pam shot out of her seat, enraged, and stormed out of the student center. But in reality, she just struggled to pull herself up and slowly made her way outside. Her sadness had become anger. How could these Christians, with all their talk about love and Jesus, how could they ignore her just like everyone else? How? She screamed on the inside. Back in her dorm, back in the bathroom, back in the mirror, Pam's tears were flooding again. She had decided that this was it. She had had enough. Enough of being invisible. Enough of people seeing right through her. She had had enough of the hurt and the loneliness and the unbearable sadness she felt in every fiber of her being. Pam decided that tonight was the end. She was going to take her own life. Sure, her parents would miss her, and she them. They'd sacrificed so much to ensure that she had a normal life, or as normal as it could be, but it wasn't enough to make up for the fact that besides them, she had no one. At least she wouldn't be a burden to them any longer. She put pressure on the blade, and it broke the skin of her wrist. The pain was sudden and fierce, but it jolted another memory of something else that had happened that night. The blade dropped to the floor with the sound of metal clanking across tile. It hit her like a ton of bricks. How had she missed it? She was so caught up in the sadness and the hurt and the rage she felt following the Bible study that it came and went with hardly a notice. Halfway back to her dorm, she passed someone in the dim light of the street lamps on campus. "Oh, hey, Pam," he said as they passed. In reflection, she realized that he had paused for a second, expecting a response, but in her flood of emotion, it had hardly registered. He said my name, she realized suddenly. He knows my name. His name was Alex. They had done a group project last semester. He was always so nice to everyone, and he saw her. He noticed her. And tonight he remembered her. Pam began to weep again as she pressed a wad of toilet paper against the small nick on her wrist. Finally, someone saw her. She had begun to shake uncontrollably. As quickly as her body could muster, she began frantically pulling things off her bookcase, looking for one loose leaf folder. When she finally found what she was looking for, the first thing she noticed was that it was ironically the same bright color as the flyer from earlier in the day. She tore it open, and there it was, a list of phone numbers belonging to the members of her group project. Alex's name was at the top. Still shaking, she took her phone and dialed the number. As the phone rang, she was terrified, but in her desperation, she was determined. Also, for the first time in a long time, she was hopeful. After 2 rings, someone answered, "Hello?" Her strained voice was shaky, but she managed to get out of her mouth, "Hello? Is this Alex? It's me, Pam. I saw you in the courtyard tonight. I could really use someone to talk to." "Sure thing," Alex replied. "I'm here with a few friends. We'll be right over." And they were. Within 5 minutes of Pam hanging up the phone, Alex knocked on the door. When she opened it, he, along with 1 guy and 3 girls, entered her dorm. They spent the next 3 hours listening to Pam, praying with her, and giving her the love that she'd heard about at that Bible study that night. Over the next few weeks and months, these 5 people became Pam's community. For the first time in her life, Pam felt that it was what it was to be accepted and loved by someone other than family. These people became her new family. She also learned about the love of Jesus and how his love is perfect. From then on, even when Pam's new group of friends wasn't around, she felt confident and assured, knowing that she was and would always be truly loved. I was with Alex and those other people that night when we got to meet Pam and pray with her and talk to her at her point of need. And we did kind of become her community, and she kind of became part of our group of friends over that next year. And it wasn't until a lot later that I heard this story from Pam. Um, but anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope it was meaningful to you, and I hope that you can know that just by taking notice of those around you, you can make a huge difference in showing the love of Jesus to somebody who really, really might need it. Thanks, guys.